Good day, friends of Wildland Fire. This is Darren Glibble, your state fire meteorologist, and we're going to take a look at kind of a fire weather potential outlook for the next 7 to 10 days. We are coming up on a period of some pretty hot weather, so we're going to focus on that, and then maybe we'll, at the very end, we'll kind of take a quick glance out to see what the end of July might bring. Let's start off with just looking at the United States Drought Monitor. So this was released last week. The focus for this presentation is really going to be on that area of South Dakota, southwestern South Dakota, inclusive of the Black Hills. So the focus for this presentation is there. I understand that southeastern South Dakota is pretty dry too, but historically speaking, southeastern South Dakota doesn't get big fires in the month of July. But southwestern South Dakota and the Black Hills do. And so we're going to focus on that area over here. Let's look at some recent large wildfires across southwestern South Dakota. So this is going to be the prairie areas. Of course, when we go back, July 7th of 2007 was a big day for fires, super hot, a couple of human-caused fires, a couple of lightning-caused fires. The Alaba fire, which we'll get to in a second, that was in the Black Hills, were all on that day. But you can see 3 of the top 5 largest fires in southwestern South Dakota over the past 20 years have been lightning-caused, and the other 2 are human-caused, and they burned some pretty good acreage, right? We're talking tens of thousands of acres in the top 2 fires. One thing I do want to point out is this does not include south central South Dakota, so like the Longhorn Complex isn't on here from 2012, but still we do got a couple of fires from 2012 on there. If we're looking at the Black Hills now, we got to think back to 2001 was a big year for fires, 2007 was big, 2012 was big, and actually 2006 was pretty big. In the top 4 largest fires, they were all lightning caused, with 1 human caused fire with the Myrtle fire back in 2012. But typically speaking, July is kind of the peak summertime fire season for wildfires in the Black Hills. So we're going to be focusing a lot on that. 2 things we're going to cover in this presentation. One is going to be kind of climatic factors that drive wildland fire, and then we're going to be looking at some more localized weather factors. So when we think about climate, and this is things you've heard me talk about in previous outlooks, right? We got to think about the conditions that are out there, and right now we've seen drought. I just showed you that the U.S. Drought Monitor showing D0 through D3 drought across southwestern South Dakota and the Black Hills. But then we got to look at temperature and precipitation deficits from average in terms of kind of a more near term, past 60 to 90 days. After that, we'll just kind of take a look at upcoming weather conditions and how they relate back to wildfires. So these 2 things, the climate and the weather contributors to big fires, really are related back to those 2 slides I just showed you with the large fires. What conditions have we historically seen when wildfires get big? And this is the types of things that we see right here. In the month of July, drought, below average precipitation in the short term, and hot temperatures. And then when we look at kind of weather or triggers, right, we're talking extreme temperatures, winds in excess of 20 miles per hour, which isn't that strong. Poor overnight RH, minimum RH is less than 25%. And then, of course, the breakdown of an upper level ridge and maybe a frontal passage, and that contributes to lightning and a little bit of the wind as well. So we're going to be looking at all that. So over the past 90 days, this is percent of normal precipitation. And again, if we're looking at kind of southwestern South Dakota, most of the area has been somewhere between 40 to 75% of average over the past 90 days. And so that, drought check, we're in drought. But those shorter term precipitation deficits have persisted. Now, granted, we've gotten a little bit of moisture the past few days. I understand that, but it hasn't been enough, right? It's just enough to kind of damp the soils, make things look kind of deceivingly green. And over the past 60 days, if we look at departure from normal temperatures, it's been warmer than average by and large across kind of that same swath of the state. A couple areas in the northern hills may be cooler, slightly cooler than average, but by and large has been warmer than average. And if we look at our accumulation precipitation, this is for Rapid City. Over here, bottom left, that's January 1st. Bottom right's July 10th, that would be today. And then precipitation increases on the left-hand axis as we go up. On average, year to date, Rapid City should get about 11 inches of precipitation. This year, the green stuff down here, that's this year. So this year, we're at 7.5, 7 inches of moisture. So 60, 70% of average year to date. The other years I have plotted on here, they're in these colors, are showing kind of those big historic fire years in the area. And you can see that 2001 was here, 2012 was here, 2002 was down here, right? We're kind of near the low end of the spectrum in terms of year-to-date precipitation with respect to those other large wildfire years. And if I look at the same graph for Custer, Custer's gotten some decent rains recently, but we're not out of the ballpark for those years in which we saw big fire growth. Custer's a little bit wetter. They get a few more thunderstorms during the summertime. It's not uncommon, but we're still kind of at the dry end of that spectrum. If we hop down to the prairie, this is Pine Ridge once again. Average is 10 inches this year, maybe around 6 inches of precipitation, so that'd be 60% of average. And again, if we look at 2012, which was the big year across the prairie of southwestern South Dakota, we're actually drier than 2012 this time of the year. So that's concerning, right? We're kind of in the envelope in terms of year-to-date precipitation when we typically see big fires. So we've set the stage, right? Here we are hanging out on the stage with our drip torches, hopefully prepping, being ready for this upcoming fire season. All right, there's a lot going on here, but this is 300 millibars of pressure. So this is up like 35,000 feet above sea level. It's showing winds. What this is showing is our jet stream as it's curling around. And this is what we call a big upper level ridge. Now this is a forecast for tomorrow. This ridge is really separating the really hot air down here from much cooler air across Canada. And that hot air is actually pushing towards the north underneath that upper level ridge. And what I want to point out is the next 7, 8, 9 slides is this is a model of where the ridge is going to be at. But I want you to see this kind of N shape that we have in the jet stream pattern hangs out. So this is tomorrow. This is Sunday, and actually the ridge really starts to build up, that hot air underneath that upper level ridge, a heat dome, if you will. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, ridge kind of breaks down. There's a little bit of a trough right here. That could bring some problems Thursday and Friday late next week in terms of breaking down that upper level ridge, maybe some little bit of precipitation. I'm more concerned about lightning potential. But then the ridge builds back in for next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so what I'm getting at is we're going to be looking at a 7 to 10 day period of well above average temperatures. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, Darren, how hot is it going to be? Well, is it going to be really hot, like obnoxiously hot? And that's Monday and Tuesday of the following week. So that's July 21st and 22nd. That ridge kind of flattens, which tells me that there might be some change in the weather going in. Okay, so focus on the next 7 to 10 days. It's going to be hot. How hot is it? Well, this is what we call a plume diagram for Rapid City. So this was this morning at 6 a.m. local time. This is July 18th at 6 a.m. local time. So this is, an 8-day forecast as we progress through. All right, and temperatures on the left-hand side. The red bar represents 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot. All right, so if you just look at the black line is the median of all of the different forecast models that this is taking into account. It's an ensemble. So every line, I think there's 32 of them, represents a different kind of perturbation of the GFS. When those lines are all snuggled in close to each other, it means we have high confidence in that particular forecast outcome. When we go out to July 17th, you'll see those lines really start to spread, so there's lower confidence in the overall forecast for temperature on July 17th. And then you can see the overnight low temperatures of these minimums that you see down here. What I want to get at, though, is we are going to have a long stretch of hot, okay? Long stretch of hot. We've preconditioned the fuels because we've been dry, and we have been hot, but now we're hitting those extreme temperatures. This is going to be at or above record high temperatures for the time of the year. So we're going to be right there in terms of the overall heat. If we look at relative humidity now, I've kind of outlined two things. Remember, relative humidity and temperature are inversely related. As temperature goes up, RH goes down. And so this green line represents a humidity of 50%, while this yellow line represents a humidity of 15%. This is really the red flag warning criteria for humidity is 15%. Anytime you're lower than that, we can get up into those red flag warnings. So daytimes now are these minimums. And so we're going to be having a high probability of daytime minimum RHs through the weekend, this weekend, and into next week below 15% RHs. That's daytime minimums. The other thing we have to think about is overnight humidity recovery. And if we look at overnight humidity recovery, it's most likely going to be sub 50%. And so we're not going to be getting the moisture into those fine fuels overnight. It's going to precondition those fuels to want to dry out even further during those hot and dry conditions during the daytime. So that brings us to energy release component. I'm going to show two energy release component charts. This one's for Baker Park, so this is really the Black Hills, right? And you'll see that currently, and this is year to date, so this is January 1st over there, all the way through today. We're it's July 9th, and then the dotted line is a forecast through July 18. Actually, I think it's July 17. And so you're going to see that our ERCs are going to spike, right, as we move through the next 7 days. And that's due to those hot temperatures. That's due to the lack of precipitation. By the way, we're not going to get any rain. And that's due to those really low humidities. If we go out to the prairies, now this is Porcupine, so this is kind of the Badlands type area of southwestern South Dakota. Once again, you see our forecast ERCs jumping up from average where they're at today to well above average to approaching record high levels for the time of the year. So this is critical, right? We are going to see our fire danger exponentially increase going through this weekend and into next week. And if you don't believe me, go check out the Great Plains Dispatch Fire Business Calculator, right? If we're talking about percentiles, we're going to be running above the 95th percentile at every single RAWS station, really in western and southern South Dakota, right? We're talking about response levels that are bumping up into that 4 and 5 when we start getting out in day 3, 4, and 5 from now. So check out the Great Plains Dispatch Fire Business Calculator. You can access this. If you don't know where it's at, go to the Great Plains Dispatch's website and you can click on the weather tab and you can get the Fire Business Calculator to see these values. I mean, look at some of these temperatures. For Nemo, 101 on Sunday. That's crazy. Rapid City West, 106 on Sunday, 102 on Monday. I think these forecast variables or forecast values are pretty much in line with what I'm seeing. So summarizing here, Mother Nature's set the stage for fire. And we're not talking about little fire, we're talking about big fire. Historically speaking, these are the conditions that bring big fire to southwestern South Dakota and the Black Hills. We're going to see, so that's we've set the stage. We've got these upcoming hot and dry conditions as this big upper level ridge sets up over the northern Great Plains and central Rockies. It's consistent. It's actually a blocking pattern. It's going to just hang out. Without a lot of lightning, we're going to be looking towards human-caused fires in the near future. But again, there's some hints of a breakdown of that upper level ridge going into late next week and maybe early the following week. So that could be our trigger area. That's typical of lightning starts when you start to see that upper level ridge start to flatten out. The one thing I do want to point out is today, being Friday, July 10th, I am looking at tomorrow. There is an outside shot of a stray storm forming over the hills. Tomorrow, Saturday, July 11th, we do got to keep an eye on the potential for some dry lightning tomorrow. But I think after that, it's just going to be far too hot and far too dry to promote convection, at least going through the end of next week. So at least over the next 7 to 10 days, we're expecting exponentially increasing fire danger. As we progress out towards the end of the month, there's a little bit more uncertainty after, say, like July 18th or July 20th. I don't want to quite make a call on that right now, but there is some hints we could cool back down. So let's just focus on the next 7 to 10 days. Let's get through the next week and a half. Stay cool out there. If you got any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to serve.